I love old mills. I used to work at an old mill. I love antiques. So I immediately fell in love with it and I said, yes, this is a treasure that cannot go away.
Especially in today's day, you don't find too many things that take you back to a time when things were slower and more community involved, and Kister Mill certainly does that.
When I first came here about 26 years ago, it was actually open to the public and you could come out and get some cider and tour the mill and stuff, and then it changed hands a few times, and so over the years it's been in different states of kind of open and not open, and we're just really excited now to see that it's going to come to fruition and we're going to have a really unique historical site that we can promote to basically the whole entire country.
A historical project like this is it's going to sit here vacant unless some people get involved in different levels to help out. So bottom line is it wouldn't happen unless you have a collaboration like that. And even with the collaboration, it takes a long time to put everything together.
As we did the research on this mill, we found out it stands out as being extremely unique among old mills of the time period. We're talking time period of early 1800s through the early 1900s. And most mills at that time specialized in one particular process. Either they ground grain, they were a sawmill, they were a wooling mill, but they focused on one aspect. They may have changed over time depending on what market conditions dictate, but it was unusual to find a mill that did multiple functions at one time. This is the only mill that I'm aware of from that time period that ground grain as a grist mill, an operating sawmill, an operated wood planing mill, which would take the rough cut lumber from the sawmill and plane it out into more of a finished product, as well as a cider press operation. All bundled into one mill is extremely unique. There's nothing that's square. Everything was engineered to make it work.
A project like this, you have to really study it, spend some time here to learn how it's built before you can do anything. It was built in 1813, and since then, in 1813 they built this place with the materials they had on hand.
When you think about the fact that it was built in the 1800s and it's being restored, and we're still here standing next to probably what was a sapling at the time, you think back to the fact that that is exactly what perpetuity is, and that we can, I can tell my children we're going to go and see a really cool historic mill today, and my children's children can come and see that mill.
So everything was very custom engineered. It was very, as one of our donors put it, they're engineering marvels of their time. Most of these people that were operate these didn't have master's degrees in engineering, but they were very good at figuring things out and just doing it to make it work.
The mill's been owned by a couple of different people. Jacob Kister was the longest, and there's actually a woman in Rhode Island she is the couple generations removed niece of Jacob Kister, and so she found out about the project and she's gotten involved as well.
The building that you see now has gone through many, many changes. So when you're looking to work on a project like this, you have to look at what materials are here and try to replicate those materials, but they're not always here. So there's a lot of problems that have to be solved. One of the cool things about this building and any building of this age is that all the materials in the building, originally, they're all local. So you see, like the floor that I'm sitting on now, this is all white oak. And then the siding, the sheathing on the walls that you see in the background, that's all white pine. And that was all from forests locally. And some of that material might have been milled here in the basement. And if you go to some of the older homes, some of the older sandstone homes in the area, there's a handful of them still around that were built in the mid-1800s. There's a good chance that the rafters and the planking that you see in the roof section of those houses around here came from this mill.
Most mills in the late 1800s would have converted over to a water turbine-based operation rather than a water wheel operation. Turbines are more efficient, you can get more power out of them. So to have one still operated by a water wheel commercially through the 1970s is almost unheard of. One of the early owners of this mill, his name was Guy Kister, invented a machine, designed, built, and invented a machine where he could custom build those little devices. They were called flights. and he shipped those out custom built to any miller across North America that requested them or made an order. So this little old mill here in Wayne County can potentially and does potentially have connections to many mills throughout all of North America.
You know, a very unique opportunity for educational purposes for kids, you know, not only in our area, but I foresee, you know, down the road, tours of all ages that will enjoy this, and you know, older people might remember when they used to do this kind of thing, and the younger kids will be amazed that this is kind of how it used to be.
I have 2 little girls, and I would love to bring them here for the cider press in the fall time. They would get a kick out of it. That would be special, yeah.
A committee was formed at the beginning of the project of local individuals and leaders, and those folks have really been the voice for the mill to get public and private funding to get us to where we are today and to be able to do these restorations. One of our volunteers and donors, Mr. Dave Noble, shared with us that when he was growing up, he remembers as a child, that pickup trucks would be lined along this road, and they would have bushels of apples waiting to be pressed by the cider press, and they would have their water jugs underneath, and they would fill them with cider at the end of the day, and it would be miles down the road. And so going back to that and thinking that that would be something that we'd be able to do again is really exciting.
There's been certainly times that myself and others on staff come in and look at a project and we're like, yeah, that's going to be complicated. There's a lot of pieces to that puzzle, but at the end of the day, we make those pieces come together and make them work. My favorite story, and it's actually better told by Rich Boyer, but the former owner, Rich, is a tool maker, very good at figuring things out, looking at things, analyzing them, jotting down a drawing, doing the math, and making things work, almost like an old miller would do. When they purchased the mill, the water wheel was in disrepair, kind of like it is now, but he found the old patterns to the water wheel in the basement of the mill, so he had a lot to work with to reconstruct the water wheel. He got it all together, but couldn't figure out one small component near the hub, near the center of the wheel. He couldn't quite figure out what needed to go there. There was no pattern for it. There was no notes about it. But in the 70s, they would do what we refer to now as one-tank trips. Well, there's still a YouTube video out there, and one of the pieces of the video footage happened to zoom in on the centerpiece of that water wheel, and Rich said when he saw that, it provided him the missing clue to complete that water wheel.
We often bemoan the fact that things just aren't what they used to be, but happily that's not always true. This old water-powered mill is a nostalgic example. It stands here at Millbrook in Wayne County, much as it has since pioneer John Nimmin built it in 1816. The water wheel, powered by a spring-fed creek, in turn powers a series of belts and pulleys in what is believed to be the oldest such mill in Ohio. Just as in pioneer times, the mill grinds corn into meal, presses apples for cider, and saws wood. It's been declared an historical site by both the state of Ohio and Wayne County, and it's listed in the National Register of Historic Places. So these belts, pulleys, and the old water wheel should be good for at least another century. Del Donahue at Kister's Mill in Wayne County.